Hi, this is Brian London at the New Orleans Conference, talking with Stephen Hayes and Stephen Moore, two of my favorite commentators on the political scene and economic scene in the United States. Faces are well known to anyone interested in politics, geopolitics, economics, and what they mean for the investment markets. Guys, one of the trends, one of the fundamental themes of the New Orleans Investment Conference has always been that geopolitics drives economics and drives investments. Every serious investor needs to know what's going on in the world and how it's going to impact the markets and the economy. You two are two of the most insightful experts in this area that we've had in the conference for a while, and we're glad to have you contributing this year. Looking at the big picture, in the U.S., we have problems with our huge debt load and the money creation that entails. I don't see any change in that in the near future. I mean, it's kind of locked in through the next elections, aren't they?
Well, you know, by the way, thank you for inviting me to this great conference. I've learned a lot, and this is always one of the top money conferences in the country. You know, my view is we borrowed $4 trillion in the last 3 years, and I'm kind of saddened by how much we've derailed this economy and dug ourselves into such a deep ditch that could take generations, quite frankly, to undo the damage that has been done. But the good news is there is a way out of this, and if we switch all the policy dials that are now in the direction of anti-growth to pro-growth, deregulate the economy, get those tax rates down, start to put spending controls in, especially on these long-term entitlements, I really believe that this economy is prepped for a big expansion. I mean, we could see very high levels of economic growth. There's $2 trillion of passive investment that's sitting on the sidelines just waiting to be reinvested. As long as investors feel that Washington isn't working against them and that profit isn't a dirty word and that capitalism isn't a dirty word. So if we get a regime change in the next couple of years, or just a change in the outlook in terms of what Washington is doing, I'm actually pretty optimistic about the U.S. going through a big growth period on a very bullish market.
So you're optimistic if there is fiscal policy reform?
Yeah, but this is going to require both Republicans and Democrats recognizing that we have a problem, and I'm not so sure they do right now.
That's a good point.
Well, Brian, if Steve Moore writes on economics for the Wall Street Journal, used to be an economic fellow at the Cato Institute, has learned a lot at this conference. You can only imagine how much I've learned since that's not what I do. And for that reason, it's been good to be around and you know, to sit in on some of the panels, but also just to talk to the people who are here and who can shed some light on some of these things that I know nothing about, or in some cases know just a little bit about. I agree with Steve's basic takeaway. I guess I'm a little bit more pessimistic. One of the things that troubled me about what we're seeing unfold on the political scene now, and we're about 1 year almost exactly from the 2012 election, is you haven't seen Republican candidates pay enough attention to these long-term debt issues. You haven't had a robust debate about really how to reform Medicare. What are you going to do with Social Security? How do you make Medicaid sustainable if that's what you choose to do? You haven't had anybody present specifics about that. And to the extent that you've had would-be Republican candidates who would have done that, people who have talked about sort of bold solutions to these problems like Chris Christie, like Paul Ryan, like Mitch Daniels, they've all opted against running. So in a sense, what you have is a Republican field right now who are not addressing these big issues. And one of the things I hope that we see as the debates progress and as we get closer to people casting actual votes is a further and deeper exploration of exactly these issues, because this is what will determine where we go after 2012.
You know, that's a good point. And my fear is that some of these guys don't understand the issues, they don't understand the solutions, and almost perhaps as scary, are they just afraid to put it forth? Are they afraid to get out front of it?
I think you have candidates in some cases who cannot talk about these things, and you have candidates who will not talk about these things. Or in many cases, you probably have both. What I'm looking for is somebody to step forward and do something bold. You've already seen this from Republicans in the House of Representatives. They were told by strategists across the board that it was crazy to embrace structural entitlement reform in the House budget. They did it. And they survived. And if you look at the special elections and local elections that have taken place since, it's at worst a mixed record for candidates who have embraced those kind of reforms. A lot of candidates who have talked about it and talked openly have won in those situations, not lost. So I would hope that Republicans might draw lessons from those races or from Marco Rubio's 2010 Senate race, where the more he talked about Social Security reform, the more specific he got as he got closer to Election Day, the better he did. And the better he did specifically in tracking polls on that issue.
And you know, I'm probably a bit more in Stephen Moore's camp as far as being an optimist with the big if, with that big but attached to it, because it seems to me largely the economic tinkering that Obama and his team have done have been the short-term incentives. And they just don't seem to understand that business doesn't make these decisions on a one-year tax break or a payroll tax break. That what you need is clarity, you need consistency and a long-term vision. Stephen, do you think that they'll actually be able to do that, or do you think the Republicans are even any better than that now that they're in Washington and kind of ensconced in that whole inside the Beltway environment?
Well, you know, there's an old saying that the Democrats are the evil party and the Republicans are the stupid party. So, you know, it's hard to make bold predictions about the stupid party doing the right thing. But I think the fundamental point that you make is right. I think the reason that Barack Obama has totally misdiagnosed the economy, not just the fact that he's an ideologue and he does want to grow government, but I think there's a bigger problem. I think he does view these problems as kind of these temporary things. If we just shift this chair on the deck and that chair, we could. And you know what? And I think Republicans fall victim to this too. No, these are big, big structural problems that need to be fixed, and that means, you know, massive change. And I do think this is one reason I'm optimistic. I think the voters are ready for big and bold. They want to go radical. They do want to blow up the tax system and start over, which is why, you know, the debate the Republicans are having on taxes right now, I think, is very healthy. You got Herman Cain saying 999 in terms of tax rates. You've got Rick Perry talking about a flat tax. You got Newt Gingrich talking about an even lower flat tax. So those are very healthy things. But we have to do that not just on tax reform. We have to fix our legal system. We have to fix our healthcare system. I mean, I'll give Obama credit. He's right. Our healthcare system has to be totally revamped. It's just what he's done is going to make it worse, not better. But, you know, we've got to fix, and maybe most importantly of all, we got to fix our school system. I mean, I live in Washington, D.C. The kids who graduate from high school can't even read the diploma. Those kids can't compete in a global economy if they don't have the basic skills and the basic education. But, you know, maybe the reason I'm optimistic is I just think the great thing about Americans is we don't tolerate failure for long. If something isn't working, we fix it. And that's my great hope for 2012, is people will say, this isn't working. Washington isn't working. We need big, bold change to get America on the track that we can retain our position as the global economic superpower.
Well, guys, very inspirational, hopeful with that big if. I appreciate your comments and your contributions to this conference. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great conference.